This podcast is rated E for explicit. If the voyeur likes to look, the exhibitionist likes to hook. Oh, did you lose your breath? It's what it took. With the presentation that left you shook. It's the revelation that got you booked for a sensation you cannot forget. But hold on, you ain't paid yet. Swipe your card or write a check. This is a game where the boundaries shift, showing things that make you stiff. What it promises is to bring quite the lift. And for some, the promise is worth the risk. Because the show is like the kiss upon which you reminisce. It'll leave you in a twist with a tale to tell about how you fell under the exhibitionist spell. You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings. Looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens. Having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. In our previous episode, Looks of Lustful Means, I spoke with 3 members of the board about shifting boundaries, secret fantasies, and what lures the voyeur. But that wasn't all. We took a voyage into the seas of gray, beyond what is black and white, and we continued that voyage in our conversation today. But the members of the board in this episode are from a different crew. They have a different perspective than the previous few. They wanted to unpack some of what was said in Looks of Lustful Means. But don't worry, the shade came in sprinkles, not streams. I'd describe it as subtle. The exhibitionist spell is the rebuttal. So I kicked off this conversation much like I did with the previous crew. To watch or not to watch? What would you do?
For me, that's an interesting question because I would tend to say yes, right? Mm-hmm. But this is the thing. I think there's a difference between just an open window versus somebody who has put themselves in the position to be watched, right? Mm-hmm. The difference here is like, say for instance, this happened to me when I was in my 20s. I was at the gym and a guy came into the bathroom, stood next to me and opened his clothes, which was an open invitation to watch. And I was like, oh, okay, right? I'll watch this for a second, right? Versus if I was on the street, I may not stop and watch somebody. It just depends on whether or not I find them interesting to even look at.
Mm-hmm. Right? So the context matters. The context I think for me, where you're at.
It does because I do feel like just the open window thing doesn't intrigue me as much as somebody saying, here, watch this. And I can start that whole thing. Do I feel guilty watching? But they told.
It's better if they don't know that I'm watching. Oh. So it's more secret. It's more forbidden. So if they are presenting something to me, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be thinking, you should have closed your window. Or you should have closed your blinds. Why didn't you do that? Anybody could be looking. I'm looking. and I'm going to keep on looking, because I'm thinking, if it was a scenario, if they said, hey, why don't you look in our window and see what we're up to? I'm kind of like, ugh, no thanks. You're wanting to show me something, and it's whether I'm in the mood to receive it.
So the excitement is about them not knowing.
Yes.
Okay.
Me perceiving something that they wouldn't show me is what I'm attracted to.
That makes a lot of
seeing
sense.
something of you that you wouldn't necessarily show me, but I'm seeing it.
Right.
So I'm going to.
And do you think that's where the quote unquote guilty pleasure of it comes in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And see, it's funny because the invitation is what I prefer, but I still feel guilty doing it, knowing I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to.
Well, and you make an interesting point. So you're saying that you're not supposed to see it. However, in your other version, Akil, the other gentleman referenced Amsterdam, and he referenced how things are done in Europe.
When you go down the road to Amsterdam, a lot of these people got glass windows, and all of their stuff is wide open, and as you walking by, you can see whatever they're doing, even at nighttime. You know what I'm saying? Like, the lights are on, curtains are open. Like, you're consciously leaving your windows open, and at any given time, people could just stand there and look and watch at what you're doing. So I believe in that sense, you are given, I guess what they would say, underlying consent. Whether it's not a verbal, but you're leaving your stuff wide open for the world to see.
And so it's so interesting because I had a conversation yesterday with some colleagues in regard to the understanding that sexuality can be freeing. And so with it being freeing, why do we put or place a label on or state that it may be guilty or state that it may be something that's wrong or there's no invitation when it actually could be, I am expressing my free self by watching, and I'm expressing my free self and my partner's free self by actually putting on a show.
And I don't think there's a problem with the watching or getting caught up in the watching. I think what happens is the obsession of it. So a one-time thing with somebody is you open a window and you're seeing, like, you're curious, you're trying to see what's going on. If that becomes a obsession of you, I think that's where the roads become a little blurry. The obsession of that thing, the one-time thing, the two-time thing, may be okay for yourself, but once it changes your obsession, I think that's where it becomes problematic for the individual.
True.
I was just thinking about the idea, what even causes something like that to become an obsession, right? Is there some kind of deep down interest already there, right? And that's where I'm trying to figure out, how do you get from just seeing something in an open window that may be interesting to being obsessed with seeing it? So
it could be to the point where somebody, so I think for some people, I think they can get off sexually by other people, not themselves having to be a part of it. So for some people, that whole thing gets them feeling that whole excitement sexually, as opposed to them being in it. So it could be a point where a person couldn't have a life where they're not doing that in their personal life. So the obsession of watching it creates the environment for them to say, okay, I'm getting off on this just by me watching this. And I'm fulfilled by this.
And them not knowing that you're watching.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so there's another twist there, because now I'm still stuck on this obsession thing, right? Are we obsessed with the watching, or are we obsessed with the people?
Well, there's also a safety in watching. Whatever you're watching, you're not doing. So it's not a condemnation on anything of you. You can justify it and say, I'm just watching. But the fact is that you're obviously attracted to it. You're watching it. You're focused in on it. But there's that freedom of like, well, I'm not doing it, so nobody can judge me.
Right.
Gotcha.
You know,
want to do it.
you want to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid of judgment, so I'm just going to watch other people do it.
And so I'm going to restate my question because that's a great point. But what I'm trying to figure out is it you're obsessed with it because it's that you're obsessed with the people who are doing it, or you're obsessed with the idea of watching. So you could be watching 10 different couples, and it's still the same level of excitement for you.
I think that part does have something more. I think there would have to be another layer of the people that are in the scene, so to speak. There has to be something there that I'm attracted to. Well, I'll speak for myself. Like if there's nothing inherent attractive to me from the jump,
Right.
then you could be a roach on the sidewalk for all I care. It doesn't have any draw for me at all. There's no power in that unless I am attracted to the scene, whatever's happening in that scene, the people in the scene, like the guys, like the young man said in the previous piece. Oh, she has a banging body, or he has a fat, whatever. There has to be other elements there.
Well, what if I, and this happens especially here in great old Southern Georgia, what if I'm sexually repressed? And that is my outlet. And so my outlet may be, I'm watching this so that I can get, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out, Calvin.
Satisfaction.
Well, yeah.
That speaks to a whole level of porn where you have that gonzo viewpoint where you are the person, you are it, and you're watching things happen to you. So it's putting you into it without you actually having to do it. So you could say, oh, I'm repressed enough where I can't physically do these things. It would bring me too much shame or whatever, but I can watch someone doing the exact same
Or it
thing.
goes against the way you see yourself. Oh, I would never do anything like that.
Exactly.
I'm not a creep.
Vicariously, I'm going to say that I'm going to get my rocks off. Yeah. Because I can watch you doing what you do, and it pleases me to watch you, and I don't necessarily have to be a part of any of that.
And also because you don't know, in the cases where you don't know that I'm watching, I don't have to deal with what your thoughts about me watching, or I don't have to have a conversation with you about it because you don't know that I'm watching.
I could be watching and smiling. I could be watching in complete disgust, but my reactions are my own, and nobody's judging me for it.
Right.
I would probably, if I'm focused in on it, I'm watching it and I'm continuing to watch it, that must mean I'm liking it. So,
yeah, but still, I think you make a good point there. It's like you could be disgusted too, but that the like is your whatever pleasure. That's the word I was looking for. Pleasure you're getting out of it, whether it's disgust or being sensual or whatever, you're still getting something out of that experience, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. Go ahead.
What if I'm not getting that in my own marriage or my own relationship? And that adds a different type of spice to what I'm actually watching.
So that's a great point.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about before, where you get obsessed now because now it's comparison now. Instead of now watching now, so now you're bringing that into your personal life now because you're expecting that into what you're missing or not having there, and you're expecting that, and that's where it becomes dangerous for a relationship. Yeah, because you're bringing expectations from something that, and then partially you may not have even communicated that to your partner of what your expectations are, but you're seeing this and you're expecting them to do it without you having the conversation. This creates problems down the road.
Well, at what point do you say, oh, I'm just innocently watching something that nobody expects me to see, to I'm actively looking for things to see that I'm not supposed to see?
And I think that was the point in the movie where they were at when they were just sitting there initially, just, oh, this is innocent.
Yes.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you brought that because I was thinking back about my question about obsession is like, are you out there looking in different windows to find that satisfaction?
To find what you're missing within yourself.
Right. I could say that, hey, they showed it, I'm just looking. But then when I start buying binoculars to look in different windows, then I may
making investments
financially to see, then okay, I'm searching for something.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's searching for
That's
something.
a great point. So what's the difference between, and this was alluded to on the actual episode, the other episode that I listened to, what's the difference between doing this and then watching porn, watching OnlyFans or whatever it is? Like, what's the difference between the two? We're still doing something that's very similar. The only difference is one may be actually happening in front of me, and one is maybe recorded or whatever the case may be. Like, what's the difference?
I think they're a lot tied, but I also think that there's some differences between it being live and something that's being separated. I think that porn is definitely voyeurism, right? Mm-hmm. But it is still an invitation type where somebody's putting this out there for you to watch. Right. They may not be anywhere aware that you're watching or whatever, but the intention is always to have somebody out there watching this. Okay. And there could be some of that in the live too, but I do think that there is a real connection between the need to actually watch this going on, and just like we're talking about comparing people's lives to your own, right? I think that they all play in that same space, just at different levels and with different intentions, right? But at the same time, I still think that you're peering into that for some reason.
But I think that there's a guilt that maybe some people feel that others don't feel. At this point now where you know everybody has a camera phone and everybody can pick up and record you at any moment, a lot of people feel like have that main character energy where they want to be out there. So when you're seeing people do something, I think a lot of times now your reaction to it is like, they want me to watch. They're obviously doing this for my attention.
Great.
You know? And so now your attitude is not like, I should feel bad for watching this. Your attitude is now like, entertain me. What do you got for me? Show me. You know? And there's
for $9.99 a month.
No, but that's a great point, because when I start thinking about social media and stuff, and I've been thinking about this ever since the MySpace days, way back when, people were putting things out there on a daily basis to be seen, right?
Yes.
And there was no guilt about it. I want you to see my stuff.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm designing a page specifically
for you to see.
My
now
stuff.
I think that when you try to be secretive about stuff, people get alarmed. Yeah. They're like, why do you want to be private?
Yeah.
Why do you want to keep this a part of yourself away from us? You know, and then they become fixated on what you're trying to hide.
Outing you with whatever it is.
Yes. It's almost like there's a denial of privacy. There's like, that no longer exists. You want to show it to us and we want to see it. So
I love that. Denial of privacy. That's a great line. We got to use that somewhere else.
Yes.
I just feel like a lot of times the attitude is like, no, nothing of yours is private. Show it to us. If I'm looking and you've got your window open, I'm thinking, you wanted me to see this. You wanted me to see it. And, maybe I find you attractive enough to keep watching. If I don't, then sorry, you lost. You lost.
Well, I think some people think too that the watching is not problematic because there's no interaction. Yeah. But once it gets beyond that to something physical, where now you want to be physically in somebody's space. I had a friend talking about, so he works out, and he was talking about all the time where people feel the need to always want to physically touch without invitation, and there's nothing. And I'm like, well, part of it too is this world that we're living in now, social media, Instagram and everything. Everything's out here and everybody's putting themselves out there. So they're creating that scene where we're all watching this now. And then the next phase now in some people's mind is from watching to something else.
Yes, there's that ownership they feel over you because they see you.
Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go.
No, I was just going to say it's so interesting because I think that we have made, at least in the U.S. and some other places, we have made sex so taboo that we do say, okay, so if you're doing something like this, if you're watching, then what happens is there's a negative connotation there. There's something wrong with you because you're wanting to watch. And so there's something wrong with you if you want to touch, and as it progresses, there's something wrong, so we put a negative stigma on that. If we were more free and more open, then I don't believe that we would have as many issues and concerns about a label being placed on there.
I think that talks about the topic of that hypocrisy that you were bringing up, right?
The stench.
Yeah, the stench, right? But another thing that was brought up a few seconds ago that really kind of stuck with me is it goes back to what we touched on in the last episode, which was about consent. There is a difference between watching and touching, right? And where is that line drawn? And why is there an expectation by some people that because you're showing it, that gives me permission to touch you as well?
Can there be an expectation of privacy in a public space, like a park?
You can.
The differences of opinions here were not subtle. We'll be right back after these messages with the rebuttal.
Someone asked me if I were actually wanting to engage in sexual activity, and I said no, which was a lie because I was horny. I just didn't want to have sex with that person.
Sometimes we lie because it's tradition.
But who wants to
Right.
be, who
That's a good
honestly wants to be with a man who you don't respect enough to tell the truth?
Other times because the truth has denied us its permission, giving way to lies of omission.
There is a reason why I don't get on Zoom calls until they know me. I mean, in terms of like showing my face. That is that lie of omission. I need for them to respect me by my voice first before they say, oh, it's a black guy.
Because we won't dare compromise our position.
That is the lie that religiosity, not religion, religiosity has told people.
That's such BS.
Sometimes a lie is born of contrition for a truth that's a thorn in our ambitions.
I've never in my old days used to be the type of person who wanted to be lied to. But this is one of those cases where lie to me.
Listen to episodes 10 and 11, season 3. Sometimes a lie and lie to me, as we unpack the many reasons why we lie. I probably lie most with lies of omission. And I don't feel bad about it. And after you follow the Poet God podcast on your favorite podcasting app, a quick search of the Poet God on Twitter and Instagram will connect you to just what we have on tap. And if you're not that social, at thepoetgod.com, we got your back. You know, I suspected that this would be one of those topics that would spawn multiple episodes, as good topics tend to do. And in this case, that is certainly true. Stay tuned for the upcoming episode called The Rebuttal. And if you've watched the recent Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix, you don't want to miss that. So, you seen anything strange at the park lately? Shoot us a message on Instagram at The Poet God and tell us all about it. That's what I wanted to ask you or transition into is what the young man who told a story about having an expectation of privacy in a place you would normally think you would have an expectation of privacy, like a park. I don't know if you remember me kind of challenging him on saying that there is no expectation of privacy if you're having sex in a park, in my mind. And he said,
you know, people cruise in parks and all that type of stuff, right? You're in a public place. You meet up with somebody and someone else walks up and starts, you know what I'm saying, doing whatever they do while watching you. If I tell you, like, hey, nah, we good, go somewhere else, the consent to watch has been declined. You should go away because now you're a voyeur.
and you say you're in a park?
Yeah.
You don't have an expectation of privacy in a park.
You can. You can.
You can?
You can.
Like where?
Like, okay,
In the bathroom?
For example, because I've been in these situations, I'm just gonna fuck it. I'm gonna tell it like it is. Everybody pretty much goes to the same areas to start out.
Okay.
All right. You might meet somebody in that area, or you might walk around and run into somebody else later. You know what I'm saying? However, you meet up with somebody and you two walk away from the group.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
To me, that's an indication that y'all want to be alone together.
Okay.
If you don't want, whether you're in public or not, if I don't want to be seen, I can tell you to go away.
All he's doing is inviting that person to simply move further away. Oh, okay, you don't want me watching. You don't want to hear my reaction to what you're doing. Okay, good. I'll just step a little further away and continue to do what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Because it's still a public
So I'm still challenged with this whole point of being in a public space and expecting somebody to actually what do you call it, honor your privacy.
Right.
I cannot imagine how that is a reasonable expectation.
Right.
Exactly, because what I'll do is, you tell me to go, I'm going to call the police. Let's see if they think it's a public space.
The problem is with putting yourself out there a lot of times is that if people repeatedly see you doing the same things, then they're going to start having a relationship with you in their mind, which gives them the boldness to try to touch or approach you.
Insert themselves. Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, yes, I don't know you. I am spying on you, but
I know you.
I've seen you do this like 4 times. I come to this park and you're still doing the same thing. So you obviously want my participation. How can I help? You want my eyeballs on it. You want to hear me go, oh no, he did it. So, you obviously want me to participate. And that's the danger of what you're doing when you're inviting people to look and look again and look and look again.
That's a great point, and I'm going to challenge you just a little bit. And I apologize ahead of time because this may be inappropriate. However, so what if a woman wears low cut or, whatever, where her breasts are showing.
Right.
And maybe a short skirt or something that's, form fitting. Is there, and she does this on a regular basis.
Right.
Is there an invitation at that point as well for her to get harassed?
No, I'm not saying that she is inviting, but I'm saying that the person that's watching is going to make up something in their mind that's going to give them the permission to cross boundaries, and that could be with like women watching half naked men as well. I'm thinking like, this is not something that men typically do for a woman's entertainment. So if he's doing it again, like maybe he really wants me to reach out.
So what I hear you saying is that everybody doesn't have this play by the same rules or don't have the same mentality around the subject.
Yes, I feel like once you become a subject to a person, then they compartmentalize you and then they want to treat you like an object. So it's a warning to like, if you're going to put yourself out there, great. It's for your excitement. It's for their excitement. But if you keep putting yourself out there, you're getting dangerous because you're now allowing people to fixate on you and want to obsess about you and then want to treat you like an object.
And everyone is not well.
And not everyone is not well.
But I do think that clothing is sometimes as much a personal choice as not as much about being an exhibitionist, right? I'm going to use a personal example. Back in the day, I actually had muscles, and I would wear tank tops. But people felt the need to touch me all the time.
Yes.
Right? And I understood that my choice to just be comfortable and to wear something I thought looked nice gave other people permission, or at least they thought they had permission, to actually invade my space. And I feel like I didn't think that I was an exhibitionist at all there, but I do feel when I look back that probably did have some flavors of that, right? And I feel like sometimes even the exhibitionists still have a sense of space.
Well, it's
right?
not necessarily a bad thing to want to put yourself out there. And that's the problem. They always want to blame the person that's showing for the person that's looking,
Or touching.
Looking, I think, is fine.
Looking is fine.
That would have been just great.
Like if you're like, I am so proud of my body right now, I just want to show it.
Mm-hmm.
I look great, I want to show it. I'm not going to hide it. I've worked hard for this. You go out there and show it. But then other people feel like, now you're an object to me. So now I can do what I want with you. That's the problem with perceiving ownership over the things that you're looking at. You can look at it, but it doesn't belong to you, And some people feel like if you're showing it to me, it belongs to me. No, I'm showing it to you because I want to show it to you.
So,
or not even you. It could not even be for you. It's for somebody else.
So what do you guys think about the line where he says, I'm a hoe for who I want to be a hoe for?
Oh, I mean, I get that. But that cannot happen in a vacuum. Right? If you're going to be a hoe out and you in the middle of the street, all of us can see that.
The thing is, it's like you're being a hoe for the person that you want to be for, but everybody else is just seeing you be a hoe. Yeah. So they're not going to think, this isn't for me. This is for somebody else. No, they're going to be like, this is for me to enjoy.
And you're a hoe.
And we don't want to pass judgment, but I'm just saying.
No, but I think what Gary is saying is that if you're calling yourself a hoe, that kind of means that you're for everybody, doesn't it? Like the inherent definition of, or am I?
I mean, I don't know if I would go that far. Yeah. But
he went a little further than I thought to go.
So, but I mean,
I was closer to you.
Yeah, I think Gary's point is very well said. Is that you're saying, I want to be a hoe, but I don't want to be perceived as a hoe.
But the thing is I can make a picture specifically for someone, and that's the way I want to present myself to this person to attract them. And they say, great, I love it, but I'm going to take this and put it and show it to everybody. So now people are judging me based on how I presented myself to this person. They're thinking, this is how you're presenting yourself to all of us, and we're loving it, but I may not necessarily have wanted to do that. Yeah. So there's exhibitionism for someone, and then there's exhibitionism for everyone. That's a great. And it's hard to understand the nuance of that. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, did you put this out there for the whole world to see? Maybe, maybe not. But we're all seeing it. But somebody is going to think, because she did that.
Well, she'll be like, actually, it was behind my paywall, which is $9.99.
Exactly. But we all figure out ways around doing paywalls. So, now we all see it and we're thinking, oh, great. It's for me now. You're for me now.
It's so interesting that you say that, and so I'm hearing what you're saying, and I read an article this morning. As a matter of fact, one of the first things I read this morning was, you guys, I don't know if you've seen the show Euphoria. Okay. So one of the actresses who was previously a porn star, she was previously a porn star, she actually was very upset because people are actually taking her pictures, the scenes that she does in Euphoria where she's naked, and sending it to her family members and sending it to her friends and so on and so forth. So at a certain point, you're absolutely right. They're believing that is because she is or was a porn star, because she is showing her body in such a way that she does in Euphoria, these sex scenes and so on and so forth. They are thinking that I have ownership of her body because she's, displaying it out for everyone.
Right.
So I can go ahead and send that out to people and claim it as my own and embarrass her because I have that type of ownership.
And I think that that's almost like a revenge attitude from the voyeur
Yes.
in the fact like you're exposing your jealousy and your anger at not being as free as the person that you're watching.
That's a really good point.
There comes a time when your voyeurism could turn into obsession and also fixation and maybe jealousy, and you see the person that's everything that you're not, and it gives negative feelings to you. And that's where the negative connotation comes to, like maybe sex workers who do this for money. You have the negative connotation of them because you're attracted by what they're doing. You're obviously paying money to see it, but then you hate them and you stigmatize them, for attracting you.
Back to that repression stuff that we're talking about, right?
That's an interesting point because there was one guy on Twitter who is a sex worker. I saw a poll that he did, and the poll was asking if you would consider being in a relationship with a sex worker, and I think when I voted in it, and I said hell's no, it was like 66% of people saying no. And like 30-something% of people saying yes. And I was thinking to myself, well, that sounds about right because I no matter how much we watch, I don't think most people would consider being in a relationship with. And he specified. He said, as sex workers, as in selling that person is having sex with who they're working with. It's not just a show. They're actually having sex.
Right.
So I think that's problematic for a lot of people.
Because the image that they're presenting to the world is, I'm for everybody, I love this. And that may not necessarily be what they are in person, but that's the image that they're selling the world. And you would have to have a lot of confidence to say, it's just an act. That's just show business. That's what they're doing for money. I know the real them. But when your mother and your sister and your brothers are all like, really though? Because he's really convincing me that he's all about it. And it takes it's a different kind of person to be like, no, it's just an act. It's just what they do for money. You don't understand the real person behind that.
I feel like that's a very understanding perspective. Right?
On a sex worker?
On the person. You're. I think that I don't doubt that you're right in many ways on that, but I do think that there is a part of that is that people want something that's private for themselves, right?
Yes. True.
And they don't want their person out there sharing that with the world.
Exactly.
They want that to be mine.
Exactly.
Right? And I feel like that's probably a bigger driving thing than justifying that they're with somebody.
Because what's left that's sacred?
Well, and that's a good point. So I think we have those of us who wouldn't want to date a sex worker, we have a hard time separating the object from the actual person. So you objectify yourself when you use sex, and there's nothing wrong with it. I want to make that clear. When you use sex to be able to earn a living, whether that may be pornography, being a sex worker, or whether that may be selling yourself on OnlyFans, Pornhub, whatever the case may be.
Men for rent.
So then there's the other part of that dichotomy where you recognize that you want something, as both of you mentioned, more sacred for yourself. And so you have a hard time separating the object from the actual person who also deserves what you feel as though you deserve.
I have a question for you, though. So, would you have voted yes or no?
I would have voted no for the simple fact that I don't have the strength to fight against everyone in my personal life for an individual like that. I'm going to be honest enough to say that, you have to really love this person to want to fight against every person that you ever know because they have a certain perception of the person that you know for real. And you can justify it in your mind to say, I know the real person though. But everyone in the world is not seeing that. And they're not going to see it because your person has chosen to share that with you and not them. And you feel privileged by that. But then you also, you know, it's like everybody's treating you like you have goggles on. Mm-hmm. You know, you're the one that you can't see her for what she really is.
Right.
You know? So it's hard. And it would be, you could say that you could do it after you fell in love with the person. Mm-hmm. And then you find out, oh, by the way, I was a sex worker and that was in my past, but a whole bunch of people know me from that.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about as you were talking. I was thinking about, to me, as a personal question, would it matter if it was in the past or would it matter if it was the present? What would it be?
I think it would matter because if it's in the past, you could tell people, well, that's in the past. There's something different now. What they're presenting to the world is something different. Mm-hmm. But if they're currently in it and still presenting to the world that, hey, I'm a sexual person, don't you want me? And you know.
And I think the question was about present. But I do want to make the point that for me it really is about alignment, not necessarily as far as looking down on it per se.
Yeah, but
and I'm not gonna lie, I might look down on it a little bit.
They feel, you know, they feel vulnerable because you've attracted them now. Right. You have a power over them now that they don't want to admit that you do.
Yeah, good point. But I think like I said, like alignment in that I can't. That's so far from who I am. So I can't see myself with a partner that's what their world is in terms of because you know what we do for work is a big part of us. If they were selling
themselves on Instagram, could you then do it?
You mean in terms of what, like a social media?
Yes, as a social media person.
Well,
nothing
you know what?
sexual, but they're putting everything in their world out there.
Do my cat pictures count?
Well, I'm just saying, it's like everyday cat pictures, and we got to stop what we're doing so you can do cat pictures for your Instagram, which is making us the money. Mm-hmm. You know, you got to think like, oh, okay, well, can I also deal with that level of voyeurism?
And that's a good question for me particularly. Because I am very much not attracted to people who are in that space, and that where they need to be there for whatever reason. However, if they can, if I observe, say I'm dating them and I observe that they are able to put their boundaries, they can put that aside, and it really is treated as work, and they manage that well, then I can respect that.
Well, I think that you're lying to yourself a little bit because I think that if a person had hundreds of thousands of people following them and they want you, are you really gonna say you're not my cup of tea?
Well, there has to be more though than
there's something attractive about other people being attracted,
and I get that too, and intriguing. Yes. I would say, and intriguing because I'm like, well, why are you interested in me?
Yes,
right when you know.
I don't have that. I don't have that at all.
Me neither.
What do you mean, like
the whole thing about being intrigued because somebody is no, I don't have that at all.
But to me, that would have to be connected to other things about them, right? Not just by itself.
Well, I mean, obviously, whatever is attracting all these other people would be attractive to you.
No,
too.
I'm usually the
oh, really?
I'm usually if that many people are following you, I'm going the other way.
That's normally me too.
Okay.
Right, that's normally me too.
Because of your rejection of what they're trying to show.
Well, not just that, it's more of like, I back to that original question, yes or no, I want to say yes, but I still feel the need to have something that everybody else doesn't. Mm-hmm. Because if everybody else wants that, it means that it's not differentiated. Yeah, I need something that is special.
What makes us special,
right?
Okay.
And it's not an absolute thing. I say that a lot. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, somebody could come up to me and be like, "All right," right? But I don't. I would say in general terms, I wouldn't go that direction. Okay. And you know, to the point where he was saying to her, I want to say yes because I'm usually open. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But to part of your point, I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't know if I could do this is my business right now. I probably would be easier to say, okay, that was who you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You whatever you're doing now, you've got this new business you're starting. I want to be supportive of that, right? But I don't also want to erase people's history. But I don't know if I could do it right now.
But what do you say to a person that's very attractive? And that level of voyeurism in the terms of they attract other people visually.
Yeah.
There's a possessiveness there because other people are seeing it and they're liking it.
Yeah.
But,
I've had to deal with that in previous relationships. But part of it was I was a lot more supportive in terms of saying, here's what they're looking for from you. Mm-hmm. If that something you want to go for? Because if it is, then I don't need to be here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well,
security is what I hear both of them saying.
Security?
Yeah. There's a huge component of being comfortable in and of yourself to be able to deal with someone who is
an exhibitionist,
voyeur, any of that. It's
right.
a huge component of security that you have to have within yourself to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that amount, and it's okay that you don't, then you check the box no.
Call me
to your point, I was thinking back on a situation where I met somebody who it wasn't necessarily about that they were attractive per se, but their lifestyle was attractive. They were interested in me,
right?
And they were in Hollywood, and they had all of that going on. They were working for a show that everybody knows, and they had that lifestyle, and they presented me to some of their celebrity friends as their partners and all this, et cetera, et cetera. And, for a moment, it was all exciting in that aspect, but I couldn't find myself in it. I couldn't find myself in it. And I think because I already had a strong sense of self, way before him, I already had a strong sense of who I was, I couldn't lose myself in it. But I do understand how people do get lost in it. I think a lot of it has to do with where you were when you were presented with that challenge, right? And so I think if I didn't have a sense of purpose or identity, then I could easily have been, because it was a lot attractive to be, and I couldn't blame anybody else for that. I just. I couldn't find myself in it.
And I love that point, and I do think that you're right that other people are going to have different ways of looking at that. Mm-hmm. And I try not to be judgmental. I just I don't look at it as a sign of necessarily weakness or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's going to be some people who are that is what they wanted anyway, and then it becomes something that's presented to them, and they're like, of course, bring it on,
right? Right. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, if that's what then you found something that is in alignment with you, right? But that goes back to what I said earlier. If I can't find myself in it, no matter how attractive it looks to somebody else, it's not who I am. Though I do understand that even for me, there are certain parts of it that's that's interesting, that's attractive or whatever. But ultimately, it wouldn't work out. And it didn't work out.
So if you walked into the loft of that movie and saw no blinds on those windows, you're walking right out of that.
Oh, no, not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
So, good point. Because I feel like there's a little bit of fun to be had.
Oh, of course.
I don't necessarily need to live here, though.
Absolutely right.
Figuratively and... logistically, you don't necessarily need to live in that space.
Right.
True.
Yeah, because I think the fun is you get to visit and then you get to leave.
And you might come back.
This was a topic inspired by the Amazon original film, The Voyeurs. But we couldn't talk about voyeurism without taking a voyage to the other side of that coin, which is exhibitionism. But the voyage didn't stop there. We spoke separately and together beyond that day as our conversations took us into the seas of gray. The next episode may just be the most controversial yet. Stay tuned for the rebuttal to see just how gray those C's can get.
I'm Akil Johnson, the poet god. Thank you for listening.